Yeah, so I mean, in terms of what you were talking about, like the Dream Act, the Dream and the Promise Act, like I do think it's so important because I remember that when I was growing up in the U.S. and I was undocumented. I came to the U.S. when I was 11 years old, and then when I turned 14, my visa expired, and that's how I became undocumented. And a lot of what I share in my books is it's about that experience of growing up in the U.S. undocumented, and even before coming to live in the U.S., um, sort of having an experience of being separated from my parents because I was 3 years old when my parents first came to live in the U.S. and then for the next 8 years they would go back to Mexico and then come back to the U.S. and go back and forth. So I only got to see my parents when they visited in Mexico, and then when I came to live in the U.S., you know, like any other sort of like teenager, I was growing up in America, and I thought like the U.S. is my new home, and this is my home. And then finding out that I was undocumented was, well, and I tell this story in my book about when I found out that I was undocumented, and it's when my mom told me that I couldn't go to Mexico to have my quinceañera, and I was devastated. And not even because I was undocumented, because I didn't even understand what that meant when I was 14. It wasn't until I was trying to apply for college that I realized, oh, this is a big problem because I don't qualify for financial aid, and also at that time, you know, we're talking about 2001, so it's a while ago. There were no in-state tuition laws or anything like that. Texas was actually the first one in 2001, which is when I graduated from college, from high school, and so that like really changed my life. And so I talk about all these things in the book of you know, finding out that I was undocumented, the Texas Dream Act passing in 2001, and then the Dream Act was first introduced also in 2001.
Yeah.
When I was a freshman in college, and I just
so you went to college without any sort of like without any sort of you didn't have any protections at that time.
Well, so I mean the Texas Dream Act passed in 2001, like a month or two after I graduated from high school. So it actually happened like right at the time when like I needed it to happen, because if it wasn't for the Dream Act, for the Texas Dream Act, I may not have gone to college because I had gotten rejected from every school that I applied to, even though I graduated in the top 5% of my high school class, and you know I was on the dance team and I was the National Honor Society. Like I had done everything that is asked of students to go to a good school, and I gotten rejected anyways. And so, you know, I know that we might talk about this later, but I remember being at UT, at the University of Texas at Austin, and I'm thinking to myself like a lot of things. One, like I said, like the Dream Act was just introduced, and so I was like, this is great. Like I'm gonna, by the time I graduate from college, I'll be able to get a job, and I won't be undocumented anymore, and I'll be able to see my family because my parents had, I talk about in the book about why my parents had moved back to Mexico, and I was so naive about it because I really thought, even if it doesn't pass this year, I have 4 more years before I graduate from college, and that's really how I would think about it. Like I have 4 tries for this thing to happen, and here we are 18 years later. I think about that, 18 years, that's a lifetime.
18 years later, and then we're also experiencing some of the same situations. In Texas, they're trying to take away in-state tuition for students right now. Our youth are out there like advocating so that this, you know, these types of bills don't pass, and that we get stronger bills that do help and support students who are and youth who are undocumented. So we're seeing this, you know, how the things that you've experienced this long ago are coming full circle. And that's why, you know, we need the support of all of the people who can relate to this and who can who are interested in supporting and joining us, you know, speaking out, sharing the stories like you do, and talking more about what is it that we can do to prevent to remove barriers really from people from just living their lives and trying to accomplish the things that they want to do.